to week 12 of Sarah's Singing Dog Vlog. Today I'm going to be having a quick chat about dealing with separation anxiety, so dogs that don't like you to leave them alone get very stressed. Having a chat about that, and first I'm going to sing you a song as usual. This week I'm going to do a song called Please Don't Make Me Love You. It's from the musical Dracula, which you might not know. It's by Frank Wildhorn. And he also wrote Bonnie and Clyde, which is another one of my favourites, as you already know, and also Jekyll and Hyde, which I'll probably do a few songs from as well. So yeah, he's one of my favourites, and yeah, this is called Please Don't Make Me Love You. So much that a heart can take before it starts to break. Please don't make me love you. Please don't make me need you. I've no room in my life for something like this. Please don't take my mornings. Please don't steal my summers. I know they will vanish the moment we kiss. I go weak when we talk. I'm confused when we touch. I should just walk away, but that's asking too much. Please don't make me do this. Please don't make me want this. All my dreams were taken until I met you. You're the one I think of as soon as I awaken. Funny how the heart tells the mind what to do. I'm not sure I can go through all the joy and the pain. Much better not to let these dreams take flight. Please don't make me love you. Please don't make me need you. Simplify my life just by setting me free. Promise me you'll do this. Only you can do this. Please don't make me love you unless you love me. Okay, right, so separation anxiety. This is a big problem for a lot of people. The dog gets so overwhelmingly attached to you that you can't go to the shops, you can't go to the toilet, you can't have a bath, you can't go anywhere without the dog whining or chewing or scratching at the door or peeing or even pooing in the house. If any of this is sounding familiar, then that is what's known in the dog world as separation anxiety. And this is not about loneliness. A lot of people think that to cure separation anxiety, all you have to do is have somebody else there or have another dog, and all of a sudden the dog is magically cured because the dog is no longer lonely. Now, the problem is that separation anxiety is actually nothing to do with loneliness. It's basically to do with insecurity, which is not the same thing. So you can actually have 3 dogs in a house and they can all have separation anxiety when you leave them, even though there's 3 of them and they're all together. You can also have 3 dogs and one of them has separation anxiety and the other 2 don't. That's a bit more unusual. Normally if one dog's going to have it, then all your dogs will have it, primarily because you'll be treating them all the same way, and that's why separation anxiety crops up, is to do with the way you are with your dogs. So it's not about them feeling lonely. The fix is not buy another puppy. So please don't do that, as I've heard a lot of people think about that for separation issues. So The main reason they have it is because they are fundamentally insecure. They're either insecure because you're not there and they need you to be there to make them feel safe, or quite often it's both, they are worried about you when you leave. So, for example, if your dog thinks that it has to look after you and protect you all the time, when you then leave the house and don't take it with you, how is it supposed to do that role? How is it supposed to look after you if it's not come with you? And that can be very, very stressful for a dog, as well as they feel unsafe not being with you, for you to look after them. It can often be the other way around, or it can actually be a combination of the two, which is really common. Now, how do you know if your dog's got separation anxiety? Well, the classic is whining, howling, barking, but also if your dog is very destructive. Now, a lot of people think that that's just a puppy thing. It's not. Okay, it's not just a puppy thing. I just realised I'm miles away from the camera because I had to go far away for the microphone for the song, otherwise it gets feedback. Anyway, so yeah, the classic is the whining, howling, barking, but the destructive behaviour, which quite often people think is boredom, or they've just got a particularly chewy dog, and often that's not it at all. The dog isn't particularly bored, it's just stressed. Chewing in dogs actually releases endorphins into their brain, which help them to feel calm, which is why destructive behaviour is a classic form of separation anxiety. The dog is feeling stressed, so it chews something that makes it feel calmer, so it carries on chewing something, and before you know it, it's chewed a hole in the wall, as I've seen before, or your entire sofa, or your shoes, which is much more common. But yeah, it can be obviously really kind of awful coming home and seeing half your house being destroyed. And it generally means that the dog has been absolutely stressed out of its head. Another one, which is probably a bit less common, but still another classic for separation anxiety, and which people often mistake for something else, is toileting in the house. I quite often people call me up and say that their dog isn't toilet trained because every time they leave, it wheezes or it poos. And I said, well, your dog probably is toilet trained. It's just doing that on purpose. It's not because it can't hold it. It's actually deliberately weeing or pooing, because doing that is dog language for kind of keep away. It's marking their territory. It's making them feel safe. Okay, so they're actually doing it on purpose. It's not that they can't hold it. If it only happens when you're not there. If they're, toileting all over right in front of you and just in general, then that's a toilet training issue. But if they're only ever doing it when you leave them, then that is generally a separation anxiety issue. So they're your three main markers, okay? Howling, barking, whining, so noise making, destructive behaviour and chewing, and toileting, okay? They're generally the three ways that you know that your dog's got separation issues. So, how do we fix this? Well, the most common problem that I see is two things actually. One is humanisation, which I talked about in week 1 massively. The most common reason that dogs get separation anxiety is because you are babying them. If you are having them on your lap, on the sofa, they sleep in your bed, or even just in your bedroom, these can be massive causes of separation anxiety. So you must stop humanising your dog. You need to treat it like a dog. So it belongs on the floor, it doesn't belong in your bedroom. If your dog is sleeping in your bedroom and you called me out to fix separation anxiety, the first thing I would tell you is that I can't fix it whilst your dog is sleeping in the bedroom with you. All right? If it can't even cope with you being in a different room overnight, it's certainly not going to cope with you leaving the house. Okay, so that's the first thing. We need to stop humanising and start treating your dog as a dog, because fundamentally that is what makes them happy and contented. Alright, so that's number 1. The second thing is quite often you're leaving your dog in a far too big a space. Alright, so a lot of people think that when they are out for the day or out for the evening, your dog is going to need space to run around and do stuff and have fun. That's actually not going to happen. Your dog isn't going to just play by itself and run around and have a ball. It's just going to either be stressed out of its head, or if it hasn't got separation issues, it will generally just go to sleep. It might have a bit of a chew on a toy, but a normal, healthy, balanced dog, when you leave it, will just chill out somewhere. Okay, so it doesn't need space for that. And actually, the bigger the space you leave a dog, and this is a generalisation, but I would say this is true of probably 90, maybe 95% of all dogs, the bigger the space you leave them, the more stressed they're going to be. Okay, because they see themselves as having to look after the whole space where you've left them. So if you're leaving them with access to your entire house, that's a problem, and it's likely to cause, if not contribute hugely, to the separation anxiety issue. So leave them in a small space. All right. Now, I'm not saying crate, but crating can be a huge fix for this, all right, especially for little dogs. Now, there are some breeds that don't crate well, primarily in my experience, Huskies and the northern breeds in general, so Inuits, Huskies, Samoyeds, most of the northern breeds don't crate well. And obviously, if you've got an enormous giant breed like a Great Dane or a St. Bernard, you're not really going to find a crate that's big enough or that fits anywhere in your house anyway. So giant breeds and generally the northern breeds don't crate well. But that's not to say you should leave those breeds in a huge, massive room. Okay, so if you can't use a crate for whatever reason, I would still look at confining them in a smaller space. Okay, even the ones that don't crate well, like Huskies. Leaving them in a kitchen is much better than leaving them in a massive lounge. Okay, but like I said, 90-95% of all dogs much better in crates anyway, and certainly much better in small spaces. Your tiny dogs, things like Chihuahuas and Poms and Shih Tzus and Bichons, these dogs tend to love crates. Like I've got a Pom myself. I've had Poms before. Obviously, I've been out and trained thousands and thousands of tiny dogs, and they tend to love going underneath things, going inside things. They like to be enclosed. It makes them feel safe. All right, so if you're one of these people that feels like, oh, a crating's horrible, it's putting them in a cage, it's awful, it's not. They love it. The reason they love it is that naturally dogs would be raised in a den, which would be very, very small. You know, when they're born, they'll be in an underground den. It's really, really enclosed, and they've got their mum and their siblings around them, so they're properly cramped in, actually. And all right, yes, we're not talking about wolves anymore, but still, puppies that are born now in a domestic environment are born in a litter box. You know, that somebody's made this small box for the mum and the litter mates. It's similar to a crate, where they were born, where they were raised by their mum, where they suckled. That's where they felt safe. It would have been in a small enclosed space. People don't breed puppies and just have them loose in their lounge. It would be chaos and really quite gross with all the mess that they make in the toileting. Okay, so they build a nice box, or you know, they create something and they have it sectioned off, and your puppy will have been born in a small space like that, and it will have been weaned in that small space and lived the first 8 weeks of its life primarily being in that small space where it felt really, really safe and happy and contented with its litter mates and its mum. Then suddenly you take it home and put it in an enormous lounge and say goodnight. It's not surprising that it's going to be a little bit stressed. All right, so don't stress about crates. Crates are wonderful. Now, obviously, if you have got a dog that can't cope with being contained in a crate, and generally that will only be dogs that are hurting themselves or breaking out. So it normally is big, powerful dogs. The little ones tend not to bother at all. In fact, like I say, they normally love it. If you're thinking, oh gosh, this applies to me, but I've never had my dog in a crate and it's now 5, you can still crate train. It doesn't matter how old or how young they are. You can still teach them. You feed them in there. You fuss them in there. You put an old smelly jumper of yours in there. You make it a happy place. And the same goes for just shutting them in a small room. You would still do all of those things. Feed them, play with them, treat them, put an old smelly jumper of yours. All of those in whether you're using a crate or a small room, that's how you would set it up. You make it a happy room. It's never a punishment zone. It's a happy room. It's where all the fun things happen. Okay, so if you're going to use a new room for the first time, don't just put them in there and leave. You need to train that room for about a week, make it a happy place, spend time in there with them, especially if they've not been in there much before, and get them nice and happy and comfortable in their smaller space. Okay, so that's the 2 big things that I need you to do if you've got separation issues, is find a small space that you can make a happy and contented place for them, and stop humanizing. Okay, the other thing that you're obviously probably going to need to do is go out a bit at a time. You know, don't just shut them in there and pop out for 4.5 hours. You would initially pop out literally for a couple of minutes and then come back. Once they see that you're always going to come back, it's a lot easier. The other thing that's really important, which I have touched on in other vlogs, is that you don't come back in and go, yay! You don't want there to be this huge contrast between when you're there and when you're not there. Okay, because if every time you're with them they're getting constant cuddles, and then boom, you're suddenly out the door and nothing, and then you come back and constant cuddles again, that makes there a huge contrast between when they're here, when they're not here. All right, so you would never walk in and just go nuts over your dog. That's not a good thing to do anyway, for a million reasons, but it is also one of the big causes of separation anxiety. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a few hints. As with all of these things, if you are having severe problems, please call a behaviourist and please get somebody in to help you properly, because these are just hints and tips. There are a lot more things that you can do which we haven't got time to go into, and also it's very important that you get a behaviourist to actually meet your dog, because these things that I'm saying here are generalizations, and if I was going out and actually seeing somebody's dog, I would be obviously dealing specifically with that individual dog and owner, which can actually make things very different. All right, so that's that. Hope you've enjoyed today. Please like, share and subscribe, and I will be back next week as usual. I'm sorry the day's different. This is going to happen now. I'm coming up to a really busy time of year, so I might put it out on a Saturday, it might be Sunday, it might be Monday. It's going to vary a bit now. I'm going to still try my best to do one every single week, but the date might change a little bit. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.